Hi, everyone. My name is Hugo Bernier. I'm a principal program manager in the Dynamics 365 and Power Platform Community Success team. And today I'm excited to talk about a different type of pages, which is Power Pages. And Power Pages, if you are wondering, hey, what's this thing? Well, it's the latest family member in the Power Platform family. And the Power Platform, obviously, you got the ability to create workflows, to create apps, to create dashboards and virtual agents. But with Power Pages, you are now able to create externally connected websites that are really like data-centric. They're really intended to be connecting to your Dataverse infrastructure, the rich Dataverse infrastructure you already have. And then because it is part of the Power Platform family, it's designed to really work with, again, Power Automate and all these cool things. Now, it's important to from the start, to talk about Power Pages is really intended for the Fusion teams to work together. Right, so we're talking about the makers, the traditional developers, and the IT professionals to work together to create websites, again, that are connected, because we want to make sure that, our sites, because they're externally available, we want to make sure they are compliant with the organization's standards, the branding standards, the accessibility standards, all these good standards. We want to make sure that they are secure. And we want to make sure that, again, we're all working together. We're not just allowing just any random person in the organization to create websites. And again, in future demos, I'll show you how we have the ability to control these things so that we are not just allowing any person to create any websites randomly. There is a process to make these websites available. But let's actually show you an example here. So in the past, I've talked about how we can use the editing functionality of the pages. So I'm not going to do that too much today. I'll focus on how to change the styles of your pages and the elements of your pages. And usually when I do these demos, I always look for a free design template and I try to emulate it. If I was doing this for real, I'd probably find a template that has the colors close to my corporate brand and I would start with it. But today I'm going to use this free theme from Theme Wagon as my inspiration. It has some bold colors. It's got a nice hero image. So I'm going to use that. So when I'm on the page, I can edit every element on the page by just selecting it and clicking on the ribbon that appears there. So for example, if I want to change the background, you can see I can just mouse over the background here and I'll see what the background looks like. But in my particular sample, I know that the background for this section is actually using an image. So I could upload an image, but in this case, I just want to use the image URL. So I'll go paste the URL here, and right away I have kind of the look that I'm looking for. I'll just delete the video here, and because I want everything to be aligned to the first left half of the screen in this design, I'll just kind of keep the two-column layout here that I have. I'll just keep the right column blank. All right, so now I'm starting to have the style I'm looking for, but I want this section to be a bit bigger. So again, if I go to the settings of this section, you'll see that I can pick different styles, pixels, percent, and so on and so forth. In this case, I know exactly the height that I want. I want it to be 580 pixels high as per my design. So it's looking good, right? And if I move to the next section here, I want to change the color of the spacer. And if I, again, do the same thing, I edit the background. I'll, as I mouse over the screen, the colors again, I'll see the colors. And you can see I can add extra colors here. So if I wanted to pick a color that I really want, I could add it here. But, I kind of want to make sure that I'm using a theme so that I have this color consistently across my entire site. So let's go explore where these colors are coming from. So if I go to the styling workspace, we'll actually see that there's a whole bunch of themes that are in there, right? And I can select different themes, and you can see as I select the themes, I can see the preview. Some of them look good, some of them don't look so good. Depends on, again, what my design looks like. But every theme has its own color palette. And, I can adjust these color palettes by just going to the color. So here, I'll just reuse the original color. I can go pick a color, and here I can enter I could pick the sliders. I could pick the color from the palette itself. I could pick the transparency if I wanted to, or in my case, because I'm copying and pasting from a theme that already exists, I'll just paste the color here and I'll drop it in. Now, the cool thing about that is when I do that, again, I can see right away where it impacts on the page. And, I could continue doing that with other colors. So let's do that. I'll just go pick some different colors. I'll just go pick the gray here, which is the main color. I'll put that in there. Cool. And then, one of the things that it's important to note is that Power Pages doesn't really tell you, this color is used here, this color is used here. You kind of have to explore a little bit to do that. And that's what I tend to do, is I'll kind of explore the colors, try to find where these colors are applied, and then use these colors consistently. All right, so there's not an awful lot of yellow on the page, so I can imagine that the color for the button, the call to action button here, is going to be the one. So I changed that to the orange. And yeah, I can see the orange button is looking good. We'll have to figure out why that gray color is coming from in the text very shortly. But, again, you can see I can just click through and create the color themes that I want. So I fast forwarded a little bit here, where I've preset all the colors and then that I wanted from the theme, and then I added more colors. Now, why would I want to spend time setting my theme, my color palette? It's because the idea of Power Pages, obviously, is to create these data-connected, rich websites. We want our makers to be able to go create pages, to drop data, tables, forms, and things like that, without really worrying about the CSS and JavaScript and the HTML. So these colors can be preset, and I'll show you later how I can even upload these colors as a CSS, and then use these colors consistently throughout the site. All right, so the dark text on the orange here is kind of annoying me a little bit. So if I go to the styling palette, I can see that, let's see. So I got all my different styles here, and you'll see the button here, the primary button, is actually using kind of a filled orange and an Arial font, but the color of the text is actually gray. So I'll set that to white. And you'll notice that I can also change the hover style and then the fill color when I mouse over. And because I don't want gray over gray here, I'll change the font color for when I mouse over the button to be white. Right? And I could continue doing this with all the other button styles in the page. But this is cool because now consistently all my buttons will actually have that theme that I'm looking for. All right, so let's save this, right? We should probably save this. Now I could have discarded all my changes, and that's one of the things that I like to do when I first start, is I like to explore through these colors, try to figure out which colors are used where in what templates, and then save it as I'm, as I make the changes, or discard completely. And I'll show you how we can even reset the style sheets a bit later. All right, so now I want my header 2 styles to be changed a little bit. So you'll see that I can make it bold or semi-bold. In this case, I'll make it bold. And I want, because my sample theme uses 30, and I'll pick a darker gray. And you can see now on the right side immediately when I make these changes, right, it starts applying. Let's continue a little bit here. So you see if I explore a little bit through the page, right, I'm seeing the styles, but I want my sections to actually be a bit wider, a bit higher, because that's what the template does. It adds a lot of vertical spaces on my template. So let's go to the section and look at the margin and spacing. And then here I have 60 pixels by default. Again, I could pick different measures or units. I still want pixels here, and I'll set it to be 90. So again, right away I see my sections are wider or taller, and that's cool. Okay, so let's move a little bit forward here. So I'll set up my heading 1. Okay, so the heading 1. The problem with the template that I picked, the sample theme that I picked, is it's using a different font and a different size. And honestly, let's remember that this interface is really intended for the makers to give them as much power as possible without overcomplicating things. So if I look at the options here, you'll see that my options are somewhat limited, right? I only have a selection of fonts. Come on. Yep, here's my fonts here. I have a selection of weights and selection of sizes, but it's pretty limited in terms of the options I want to give my makers, and that's by design. Again, same thing if you go to SharePoint and the page editor, right? You start with some predefined colors, predefined styles, and the whole point of this is consistency, right? Because if you think about it, your website that you're creating here is going to be available externally by your partners, your customers, your constituents. You want to continue enforcing your brand identity. But, unlike the rest of the Power Platform, the one thing that I like about Power Pages is that, the rest of the Power Platform, when you reach the limits of what you can do with Power Apps or Power Automate, you're kind of stuck, right? You have to live within that bubble of what the product gives you. But with Power Pages, once you reach the limits of what it can do with the user interface, you still have access to HTML, JavaScript, and CSS. So this would be more a scenario that a maker, maybe, not a maker, sorry, a developer would maybe want to go edit some styles. And so let's go take a look. Let's go on the page again. And this is the heading that I want to change. But here on the upper right corner, I have the ability to edit code. And if you remember in Power Apps portals, we used to have a little pane that would open in the bottom. And I use the term lightly here. You could edit stuff, but it was not always the most enjoyable experience. Here we have the ability to go directly in Visual Studio Code and edit the content of every page. And you can see I have the CSS, the JavaScript, and the HTML. So that's all the HTML that's on the page is actually here. And if I wanted to edit the HTML, I could do that. I'm not going to do that in this case, but see how it's using the theme colors right here. So it's not hard coding the colors, it's actually using the theme colors. And here I see that the create an engaging headline is actually a heading 1. So I can actually go create a CSS that imports the font that I want for heading 1 and sets the styles for heading 1. So let's do that. I'm going to go copy and paste here because watching me type this would be very painful. Let's see. So I'll paste the import. And again, I'm using the @import to import a custom font. The majority of websites out there use custom fonts. It's really easy to import custom fonts, and Power Pages supports it. But again, we don't want just the makers to randomly start creating custom fonts. We want to make sure that we enforce that corporate identity. So this font here would be my corporate font that I want to use. And then what I'll do is I'll paste also H1 style, and I'll overwrite the font size, and the weight, and the margins, and things like that. Now, when I go back to the editor, I can just click on Sync. And what it will do is it will basically tell it, hey, someone's changed the code behind the scenes. Go update it. And then if I go preview the page, so click on Preview, click on Desktop, what we should see, well, it's already done it, but right away it's actually changed the style of my heading. And just to prove that this is a real thing, if I go change here this word to be bold and go save that and preview that, we should see that the heading has changed styles. All right, there you go. Okay, so far I've been able to go from a maker experience to picking palettes and things like that to going into the CSS for that page. But what if I want to customize more? Well, for example, the navigation here is kind of ugly, right? One of the things that we've noticed is when I was playing with the colors, I introduced some gray navigation elements. And, well, okay, I can just go to the styling and I can just click around with the colors. I happen to know that this is the same color here, so I can just overwrite this color, right? So I'll just set that to white and it should make my navigation nice and pretty. But here's the problem. When I do that, yes, it does fix my navigation, but it also fixes or breaks a lot of things. All my text in the page is actually broken. So one of the things we have to be careful about when we're playing with these colors is we really have to make sure we understand the relationship between the color palettes and the brand colors with the elements in the page. But in this case, I want to actually apply some font styles. I want to apply some hover effects, and I want to make sure that this is done consistently across my entire site, not just on a page-by-page basis. So let's go back to Visual Studio. Let's go back to editing the code, and let's just test new HTML here, or new CSS, sorry. So what I'll do here is I'll copy and paste my CSS I've created. Ignore the stuff that's at the bottom. I inserted some code to break some looks that I'll fix in later sessions. But here, if I sync, I've actually changed the, you should be able to see, I've changed the navigation color, I've changed the navigation font, I've changed the hover effects, all that stuff. Let's move forward a little bit. I'm not going to wait for this to refresh. Okay, but the problem here is what I'm just doing now is I'm actually changing every single page. I don't want that to be on every single page. I want those styles to be applied across the board on the entire site. Well, if I go back to my styling, you'll see that I have in the hidden menu option against my theme, I have the ability to manage custom CSS. And you'll see there's already 3 CSS that are applied, but I also have the ability to upload my own custom CSS here. So what I'll do is I'll go find a CSS that maybe a developer has written for me, the Contoso style, or maybe the brand police in my organization has already created this CSS for me because this is a Bootstrap site, so we can use Bootstrap style sheets. And if I go back to the site, now I am applying the brand colors that I've applied. I'm applying kind of the styles for Power Pages, and I've applied my custom CSS in that order, and then I'm applying the themes on top of it. Now I can go back to my custom CSS for the page. I don't need that anymore because I'm applying these CSS to the every single page in the site. And let's see if it comes back. It should come back. So now the other thing that I can do if I preview this, just to show you, this is starting to look like the site that I want to, right? We have pretty site, we have the pretty sections, and the headings all done, and the buttons are having the style and the color and mouse over effect that I want. This is great. But what if I want to do some other stuff with my style sheets? So the one thing that I can do, if I go back to my style, my global styles that I've now uploaded, and I manage my custom styles, right here through that hidden button. I could just, again, reset everything to default if I messed it up, but I don't tend to avoid messing it up. So if I go to my custom CSS, I could also upload more than one custom CSS. And the cool thing about that is if I had more styles, or I had a style specifically for I want buttons to behave a certain way, I like to have individual CSS that have these styles, so I can pick and choose kind of a la carte menu of styles in my demo. All right, so we'll skip ahead while it's uploading. So now I have kind of my 2 CSS that have applied, and I can just change the order because they get applied in the sequence that you see them, right? So I can put the more CSS first, or I can move it down. I can enable it or disable it if I wanted to, or I can actually go edit that custom CSS directly in Visual Studio Code. Again, that whole experience of being able to edit things like CSS and HTML and things like that directly in Visual Studio Code without really kind of having to open a different application, but doing it all from within the browser. That's kind of really powerful. All right, so this is my page. Let's just kind of move forward here. One of the things that I can do, everything I've learned here today, is all available. If I go back to the home and I go to the Learn section, you'll notice that there's sections about design and build. Well, today we were actually using the Design Studio. We were creating themes and this one, and we were also using Visual Studio Code and Power Pages to actually edit the stuff. In future sessions, I'm going to show you how we can actually go in and change the structure of the page, create some page layouts and things like that. And then we're going to do some fancy forms and lists. But that's for another call. And that's it for me for today. Back to you, Vesa.
That was a teaser for the future sessions. Thank you on that one. So it's going to be awesome. Right. Not yet. Not yet.
You have no choice to bring me back.
Yes. We'll need to get you back.